When most people think about the first day with a new pet, they probably think of how excited they were, how much fun they had. I just remember the fear coursing through my body as my worst fear came true. Before we get into the story, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 17 and I've lived in Fort Collins my entire life. I have emetophobia, which is a fear of throwing up, and nothing in the world scares me more. Some of my favorite hobbies include knitting, crocheting, solving puzzles, and doing crosswords. Basically anything you can picture your grandma doing as a hobby, I probably do. Finally, the other important thing to know is that I love dogs. I have always had one living with me, and it would be weird to not. However, despite how much I love dogs, I feared throwing up more. And this is the story of how our puppy Charlie threw up on me and how I overcame it in order to love him once again. So I've been scared of throwing up for as long as I can remember, whether it was me or someone else. And Charlie was the first being that ever threw up on me or even just around me. The dog we had before him wasn't very rarely got sick. And so it never had occurred to me that the dogs who had always given me so much comfort could actually cause the fear. It was the last day of 5th grade and we were driving out to go bring Charlie home. We were all so excited and I was sure nothing could go wrong. Everyone was just laughing the whole car ride, both there and back, and on the way back, my sister and I took turns holding Charlie and everything was great. When we got home, he was bounding around the backyard and having a great time with that puppy spirit where nothing can possibly go wrong for them. And then, while I was walking by the refrigerator, Charlie threw up on me. I froze, and I started screaming. Everything around me just disappeared, and all I could focus on was the fact that my worst fear had just come true. It took my dad to snap me out of it, but even then, his voice was absent. It was like he was on mute, and all I could understand was his finger pointing towards the sink. So I followed his directions, and I got myself out of there. My parents decided that Charlie would go back to the breeder for the next week because she was a vet, and we didn't want our dog to get sick or for him to suffer from an illness that she could help with, that we would have no clue what to do. So the next Friday, we drove out to go see Charlie again and bring him home for the second time. Instead of the laughter and joy that the last drive was filled with, this one was just terror. And I did not want to be there. I was sure that I would never love Charlie again. And using every ounce of strength I had, I managed to walk over to him and I touched him again. And despite telling my mom time and time again that I would never love him or hold him or care for him, it took him an hour to wear me down. And he and I were two peas in a pod for the rest of the summer. Every morning I would wake up before my mom went to work, so that way he didn't have to be alone, and we would spend the entire day hanging out, and I would take him out on walks and play with him. And in the end, he wasn't that terrifying creature that I had made him out to be in my head. Instead, he was just a sick little puppy who needed my help. And ultimately, I wouldn't change anything about what happened on those first few days that we had Charlie. I was able to overcome one of my greatest fears, and I was able to grow, and I spent the rest of the summer loving Charlie, despite the initial terror we had together. And I will treasure that summer, especially because it was the only one we had together. And I'm so grateful that I was able to overcome that fear and I didn't mar the little time we had together. So this is the story of Charlie and I and the fear I overcame in the summer before 6th grade. We went over who I was and how I overcame my greatest fear to care for a puppy who needed me. In the end, the dog I swore to never love again became my best friend that entire summer. And I can look back knowing that I have no regrets of that summer, and I can look at it with pride for myself and love for the dog who I will never forget.